Welcome to Everything's Fucked podcast, where you haven't been fucked till you've heard everything's fucked. You're here with Monica.
And Asia.
And today we are talking about masturbation.
Yep.
I
Very taboo
mean,
topic. People
it
don't
is.
really talk about this one. So we definitely
No.
have to cover it.
I feel like it's talked about in like a joking
Almost like
sense.
you're making fun of somebody, though. Like, right? It's in a condescending
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, kind of. I
Yeah.
would agree. Yeah, I would agree with that. Or like even though it's kind of being talked about more like on social media and stuff because you see people like have affiliates like we do with Dame
Yeah.
where they have affiliates and so they're kind of posting that. But I feel like that is maybe who we are following, you know what I mean? And
And who
not
are
like
following us. Yeah.
right, and not like a widespread like conversation about masturbation or anything like that. Because I mean, that's something that I feel is like not even taught in sex education. I don't think they really touch on that too much.
No, they don't. I don't think that it's like a part of the subject, but it's not like a hyper focus.
Yeah, and I think there's negative connotations that come with it. So I think just talking about it is important because we probably all grew up with the sex education that masturbation is shameful and like not good for you, or you know, it's can cause issues in relationships and things like that. And so I think basically what we're trying to do is like have that conversation in a different context, right? Like
Yeah.
why is the shame there, how to get rid of it, how to have a healthy conversation about it, how to change your own narrative about masturbation and look at it in a way that's like positive and beneficial and why
And
it's
healthy.
important and
Yeah.
healthy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like we should kind of talk about like our own experiences with that growing up and kind of start off with that and then we'll go from there. How's that sound for
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. Go ahead. You first.
You already said so you can go first this time.
Uh-huh. Okay. Well, for me, I think it was a little different than a lot of people because I had the sexual abuse underlying in my early childhood. So my mom did have conversations with me from a very young age about it because I was acting out once my abuser was taken away. I started acting out. So she did have to have, sit down conversations with me about hand hygiene, all that different stuff, where to do it, when to do it, that kind of stuff. So that was a
Like the
early.
appropriateness of it.
Yes. And it was an early conversation, but there was never any shame behind it. It was almost like this is what you're going to have to do to get through this point in time so
Yeah.
that you can carry on. You know what I mean? Because you've been having the stimuli for so long. You can't just take it away. It's not going to work for you. So for me, it was a little bit different. And I feel like the only people that got shamed growing up when I was a kid was my brothers, because I think it was more like known that when they were in the shower for a long time, like they were doing something. So
Yeah.
like it was like an undertone of get out of the shower. What are you doing? Jacking off? Like it was almost like
Yeah, like negative context. But isn't that
yes, only
interesting?
with the
Because
boys. Like for
that's what I was
me,
going to
my
say.
mom bought me a toy. She was very supportive of me. But with the boys, it was like quit touching yourself. You know what I mean?
Isn't that interesting though? Because when you look at the opposite like side of that, like when it comes to like males and sexual activity, like that's almost celebrated, but like the
Yes,
masturbation part of it is not
it's
celebrated, where we
not.
would probably have less sexual activity if masturbation wasn't so shameful. But then
Aim.
you look at the flip side of girls and nobody talks about female
Yes.
masturbation. Nobody has those conversations. And we talk about the like negative impact of, you know, promiscuity or girls and women who are having sex and things like that. And I just think it's really interesting because when you say like there's a negative connotation, I feel like same. I grew up with the understanding that it was like maybe not even something that girls did because
Yes.
nobody even made jokes about it.
Yeah, we
Right.
did, and we didn't really talk about it openly in front of the boys. It was a secret that I did it, that I was allowed to do Does that
Yeah.
kind of make sense? Like it was
No,
like
it does.
this is your little secret. You do it because it's happened to you, and so you need to just do it when you need to. It's not like a thing. It wasn't like scheduled or anything. It was just this, when you need it, there it is. You know what I
Every
mean?
day at 4 o'clock.
But the boys, it was like almost like you're taking too long. So I carried that into my adulthood, and I would make fun of my brother-in-law who would take extended showers in front
Yeah.
of people because it felt socially normal. And then my son, who's 13, started taking a little bit longer showers. And I one time said out loud, like, what is he doing in there? Is he jacking off? And my husband spun around so fast and he's like, what if he is? What if he is? Are you going to say that to your son? You're going to, I can't believe you just said that. And I had to sit back and be like, whoa, you're
Yeah.
right. Like I'm shaming my son when I didn't do that to my two older daughters.
Yeah.
You know
Isn't
what I
that
mean?
interesting?
Yeah. And so I
Yeah.
really had to sit back and talk about it with myself and have like a little reckoning with myself on why I'm doing that and what causes it. Well, it's my whole childhood. It was modeled to me. It was made okay to make fun of them. They were taking too long. It was obvious they were masturbating where mine isn't obvious and it's a secret and no one knows about it. So it's
Yeah.
okay.
But again, in the context of like the sex part of things, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you're generally, I mean, this is not for every parent, but generally like women, female mothers, whatever, are not going to their sons and talking about like all the negative connotations of sex and why they shouldn't be having sex, but we are doing that with our daughters.
Yes.
So I feel like it's just kind of like an interesting thing where it's like the masturbation part of it is just like, no, you're do not do that. That's dirty, gross, whatever. And then it's like, good job, champ,
Yeah.
getting
Getting like,
hooking up with that one.
yeah. And for me, like I feel like I almost I almost feel like that when my son's doing it, it's just too obvious, and that's why I'm pointing it out. Like you're making this obvious. Like couldn't you? But to a boy or to anybody, you shouldn't be doing that when they're enjoying
No.
themselves. You shouldn't
Yeah.
be pressuring them or putting any kind of like time limit on it. It's their body. It's their time with themselves. So it's something that I gave that respect to my 23-year-old daughter, to my 19-year-old daughter, but my 13-year-old son, I was like, whoa, pump the brakes. Like why him? I don't want him doing that. I don't, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. But
Yeah.
then it was like, whoa, what's wrong with me? You know what I mean?
Yeah, like why where is that shame coming from? Where
Yeah.
is that stigma coming from? And like you said, you grew up that way, right? With people having that negative contact. So for me, my family never talked about it. My parents never talked about it. We didn't really have like good conversations about sex or, they never sat down and quote had the talk with me or anything like that. And so it was definitely something that felt shameful because it was never talked about in any kind of positive light. But on the flip side, I was always hearing, I didn't grow up with my brothers, right? So I never had a parent like making fun of my brothers or making comments about that. But I do remember my dad used to make jokes about like probably now very inappropriate jokes that I'm an adult and I realize I would never talk to my children this way. But anyway, especially my daughters as a
Yeah.
man. But anyway, um, it was just like a very like, oh, haha, like jokes about masturbation and like this is when we were teenagers, not like little or anything. My dad wasn't like
Yeah.
super weird. He's just very inappropriate and doesn't think about social situations. But um so yeah, so it was just always that negative connotation. And I don't remember ever hearing anyone make jokes about female masturbation until I
Mm-mm.
was like well into high school.
Yeah.
Well
Me
into
either.
high school.
Me either.
And
It's
it was
crazy that
always
now that we're
again
talking about
negative.
it, I never really, until I sat down to do this episode, I didn't really think about all of it. I had only just that one story with, my son, and then looking back on it that way. But this really opened my eyes to how we can be instilling shame into anybody about this topic. You know what I mean? Like even grown people that say, I masturbate every day. What, you masturbate every day? It's like,
Why would you do
well,
that?
yeah, it's
Aren't
like
you married?
people just
Yeah.
have so many opinions about it, and it's something that it's such a personal issue. It's a personal thing you do for yourself and for your mental health and for your physical health and for all of the reasons. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And we'll go into a lot of those. It's just
Yeah.
really interesting because like growing up with the negative connotation, like I still feel a lot of like shame and like stigma around it. And even like having the conversation or like saying the word
Yeah.
masturbation or hearing it sometimes it makes me
Alarming.
uncomfortable.
It's
Yeah.
alarming a little bit to me
It
sometimes when I hear
it
it.
is, and like we've done a couple of posts on Instagram, and TikTok in regards to like masturbation or
Self
like
love.
self love, pleasure products. Like we
Yeah.
have vibrators that we're affiliated with, which we'll have the link for in our show notes. You can find it in the bio as well. Honestly, we're in love with them, but just shameless plug right there. So just like doing that is so far and above like beyond my comfort zone, but I know it's so important because I want my daughter to feel empowered in her body. I want other women to feel empowered in their body. I want men to feel empowered in their body
Me
and
too.
just feel like this is my body. I'm making decisions with it.
Yeah. And they're healthy. You know what I mean? It's
Healthy
like,
decisions. Yeah.
the shame, it's, that's why I'm glad we're doing this in a 3-part series, because the shame comes from the abstinence, and you're supposed to be abstinent. But honestly, if you're touching yourself, that kind of goes hand in hand with the shame, like abstinence. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
you're supposed to be holding on for something later and you're
Yes.
not. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
it goes hand in hand, I think.
Yeah. And you just mentioned our 3-part series. If you guys didn't catch last week's episode, I believe it was last week's episode.
Yeah.
I'm really bad, guys, at this kind of thing.
Abstinence is last week, I think.
Oh yeah.
And
Okay. So last week's episode is abstinence, and we are really talking about like all the pros and cons to having those conversations. And then we're talking about masturbation this week. And then next week, we're going to have another episode about sex because it's quote Sextober. Okay. For us.
October.
Sextober. So anyways, if you guys didn't catch that episode, please go back and listen to it because we are really covering like all of these things because we do feel like it's really important.
And we feel like it is a series. You know what I mean? It all goes hand in hand with. So if you listen to all three, it'll all make a lot more sense.
Yeah. Okay. So there is like, besides all the shame and stigma that is attached to masturbation, like people don't ever talk about, in my opinion, like the idea of it being a beneficial practice.
Yes.
So when we talk about like masturbation and sex as a whole, there are definitely things in regards to masturbation and sex that can be very unhealthy. I'm not advocating for people to masturbate multiple times a day if it's taking over your life and you're not able to function anymore because all you're trying to do all day is masturbate. Like that's a problem,
If it
right?
becomes unhealthy,
Yeah,
yes, that's where
guys.
boundaries. Yeah.
Yeah, everything in moderation. Okay.
Yes.
And same with sex, right? Like
Yes.
if you want to have sex 3 times a day and you're a consenting adult and you're still getting all your shit done, awesome. If you're out there, maybe paying for it and that's not part of your family dynamic or whatever, like then it could potentially be a problem. Also,
Yeah.
I'm not shaming anyone who pays for sex. Do what you're going to do.
Do what you got to do, baby.
Do what you're going to do. Okay. So we really want to talk about like some benefits of masturbation. Because like I said, I don't think those are talked about very often. There are a lot of different benefits that are physical, mental, emotional, and even like relationship benefits, right?
Yes.
So I will put this in the show notes so you guys can link to it as well. But I found a really great article that talks about like 17 different benefits, and we probably won't cover all of them because time is us. We can't just sit here for 2 hours talking about master. I mean, actually, we could.
We probably could. We probably fill the whole 2 hours too.
Okay.
It's such an interesting topic.
It is really an interesting topic. And Asia and I participated in a panel, a masturbation panel. The company that we're affiliated with for like sex toys and pleasure products and things like that, they do a lot of like continued education, which I absolutely appreciate.
Yeah.
But this panel was like so amazing. It was like women involved and it was everybody talking about like all their different experiences in life when it comes to this topic. And I just got so much out of it. I know Asia did too. So
me too. Eye-opening.
Okay. So the first thing I want to say about this article is I love how much information is in it, but it says jacking off. And I almost like lost it because that is one of those things where it's like, we're talking about masturbation, right? And that is one of the like ways to say it, but
that's the way I say it.
It's like a dirty, weird way to me. And that's goes with the shame stigma of talking about it, right?
Yeah, that's the way I say it. Like
because you said it earlier. You're like, it's they're jacking off. I'm like, I don't think I have ever said that except for maybe when I was in high school. Like,
well, I'd be saying that to my brothers. I'd be like, what are you doing jacking off in there? Get the fuck out. Hurry up in there. That kind of thing.
I just can't. I don't know why.
I don't say it now. But I don't think, okay, so I have 2 teenage kids and I don't think that they would respond to me using lingos like masturbation either. I would have to say jack off.
It's like very scientific.
Trust me, they'll just laugh in your face, bro. They're not into
touching
those.
Yourself.
Yeah, touching yourself. No, they just don't like those words. They're a little bit too like, like they're dirty words to the kids. So you try to use the words the kids use. You know what I mean?
Right? I do. Okay. But anyways, it says, okay, this is kind of funny because it's a pun, right? Okay. So jacking off can get you, or more specifically, your pelvic floor jacked. You get it?
I do.
Okay. So, like an orgasm creates a series of muscle contractions in the pelvic floor, which actually helps strengthen your pelvic floor. And so like Kegels, those are part of strengthening your pelvic floor, but this is actually like orgasming is a mini workout for your pelvic floor.
Yeah,
It's
it's like a
actually
full it's like a full workout for that area of your body.
yeah, exactly. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting when you think about that because you have these internal muscles, right? They work together to support your pelvic organs, like your vagina, your uterus, your bladder, your bowels. If you're a guy, it's not supporting your vagina unless, whatever. And it's really holding all that shit in. Okay?
Yes.
So working those muscles is important and you hear like, "Oh, you just had a baby, like do your Kegels. Oh,
Yeah.
you're peeing when you jump on a trampoline. Guilty. Work out, do your Kegels.
Yeah.
Orgasming is a great way to do that. And also it's way more fun.
Way more fun.
Masturbation can help dull pain. Did you know that?
Yes. Yes,
Because
I
it's an
believe in that.
orgasm,
I
right?
believe
Okay,
in that.
so when you have an orgasm, you release dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin.
Oxytocin. Yeah.
So these are all your like feel good hormones and transmitters. And when your body is like going through pain or, like a headache, for instance,
Yes.
some people will like maybe jokingly say to you, like, oh, go have sex or whatever. Like, so that's probably the last thing you want to do when you have a headache. But it's actually like scientifically proven that it can help your body
Go
with
bang
with
one out.
pain and yeah, endorphin and hormone release. It's not going to heal an injury, but it can definitely like dull the pain.
Yes.
Okay.
I've never used it for pain management, but I can see looking back how it has helped my pain.
Yeah, when I get a really bad headache, like this is a consideration that I have. So, just so you know.
I love that about you.
I'm like, I have a migraine. Everyone's like, I know what Monica's doing later.
Monica. Reed's getting some.
Right? Okay. So, or not. I mean, I could do it myself, guys.
I love that.
Okay.
I love how you snuck that in and got so close to the mic. Okay.
Also, it can help with period cramps. So this is kind of a big one because I feel like being on your period is one of those things where like sex is taboo. Some
Yes.
people are very like
I'm against
anti,
it.
and
I don't like it.
a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
Personally, I do, but other people, wink wink,
See,
don't.
I don't mind the self pleasure when I'm on my period, but I don't want
It's
actual
because it's
penetrative
messy,
sex.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I totally get that. So,
Yeah.
Laurels is good for that. We have
Oh,
another
it
for you
is
guys. I'm
too. It
sorry. I'm just
is.
going to be throwing this in there because
They are
this one is,
so good for that.
yes, so good for that. Okay.
Oh my
Well,
gosh.
I'll link that in the show notes too. It's not a masturbation product, but it's good for sexual play. So,
Yes.
okay. So your uterus is a muscle and it's contracting, right? And so basically what it's doing when you're on your period, if in case people don't know, is your lining that didn't get an egg implanted into it is shedding, right? Because it's basically builds a nest for the egg to grow in. And if you don't
Yes.
use it, the nest needs to be remade so that it's like healthy for your next cycle. And so what happens, people who get cramps, their uterus is like contracting and it's like pushing all of that lining out.
Yes.
Sorry for those people who are like squeamish about things like this, but it's, I think, really important for people who don't understand.
For people who
like,
menstruate, it's very important that
yeah, and
everybody
people who
knows
don't.
how it's going down. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yes. Okay. So sometimes that can cause cramps. So some people don't feel it because it's just like small ones, right? And sometimes people's uterus is like they'll feel the contractions,
Yeah.
and it's like not the same as, it's pretty similar to pregnancy contractions when you're like having a baby and
Yes.
giving birth. But so when you have an orgasm during that time, if you're having cramps, like that is another thing where it's like it's releasing those feel good neurotransmitter, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and it kind of helps. And
It
and
gives it a little
also,
boost, right? It gives
yeah,
it like a little boost with the contraction.
yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Makes
It
sense.
helps relieve stress. I just feel like we don't need to go into too much detail about that because I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory.
And it's true. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? If you've had a really bad day and you go home and you know what I mean?
Yep.
Help yourself. It does
Uh,
relieve that
Yeah.
angst, you know what I mean, that you're feeling from the day, and you get like a restart almost.
Takes the edge off.
It does, man.
I would agree with that 100%. It can make you happier because again, like it's stress relieving. It kind of can help with like any like little pain situations, but also it releases those feel good hormones, and feel good hormones make you happy. Dopamine makes you happy.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one is one that it's kind of a catch 22. Okay. it can potentially increase your libido. And this is for some people. So, one of those things is like, if you don't want to have sex or you're not in the mood, like the idea of masturbating is like, it's not appealing.
Yeah.
You're not you know, you have to have some kind of like libido or sex drive if you are interested in like going the course, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that they've talked about is like sex begets sex, right? So if you're masturbating, you're more likely to be more like interested in other forms of sex or intimacy. And so they talk about how in some different studies they say that, you know, vulva owners who struggle to get turned on could potentially like push themselves to just masturbate, and then their body is responding to that, right? And then they're kind of like getting back into that feeling of like,
Yes.
oh, this feels good and I'm enjoying it
Reminding
because
their body. You know what I
yes.
mean?
Yes, exactly. And so I think some people look at that as like, well, if I don't want to have sex, like I'm not going to want to masturbate. And it's kind of like a good, like engine warm up, I
Yeah,
guess is how you
if
could look
you're
at
like
it.
in a dry spell and you're feeling like, I know after I've had my kids, I have like a good dry spell. Sometimes it's 4 months, sometimes it's 6 months, just depending on my own libido and if it comes back or not.
Yeah.
But like for me personally, self pleasure and masturbation brings me back around because it reminds me, oh, yeah, that's what I'm missing. Oh, I do feel better. Oh, fuck, it's
Yeah.
been
You
a
kind
long
of,
time. You're like,
maybe you go through a dry spell or something like
yeah.
that. And
And
you're
that
like, oh, I
brings you
forgot.
back to the good feelings. And I think it's also important if you're having that dry spell, if your partner is comfortable, maybe doing the self play together to try to
Yep.
like maybe incorporate that to show them this is what I like. What do you like? That type of thing, because that can also
Hmm.
get you right out of that dry spell. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that's one of the things that's actually listed in here. It talks about like that it can be like it can lead to more pleasured partner play. And
Yeah.
so,
And
you know, maybe
intimacy.
yeah, because you're kind of like sharing that experience together. And I
Yes.
think that's one of those things like that women really struggle with to have that conversation with their partner because as women, I feel like we kind of are told, you know, sort of
That's a
that
private thing you do on your own.
yes, well not even just that, but it could potentially make your partner feel like they're
Oh,
not,
yeah.
you
That's the
know,
other
like
way. They're not adequate
yeah,
enough.
exactly. And it's like, well, no, you know, and you know, here's another thing that I think is not talked about often enough is like some women don't even orgasm with vaginal stimulation, like
That's me.
penetrable
That's me.
stimulation. Right. And
To me,
so
there's an outside girl or inside girl. That's how I've always had it in
it's
my
so weird
mind.
that you say it
I
like that.
know,
I
but
just like
that's how I've always thought about it, and I've always been just an outside. You know what I mean? Like once in a while, like once a year, maybe, but it's always outside.
yeah, and I would say I think we've talked about this before. There's like a crazy amount of women who cannot orgasm from penetration. Like they
Yeah.
need the clitoral stimulation as well. They need like it to be coinciding together or
Yes.
clitoral stimulation on its own or whatever. And so if you're not having that conversation with your partner and then you're not finding sex enjoyable and it becomes a chore, right? Like you don't want to do
Yes.
something that doesn't feel good and doesn't make you
Doesn't
feel connected to your partner
and
because
doesn't
then
have
you
like the
start
outcome that you're anticipating. If it never reaches that outcome, you're gonna get over it. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah, I think too, like you start feeling resentful towards
Yes.
your partner for not getting you there, even though
Yes.
like you're not communicating like what your
You want
specific
them to read
needs
your
are.
mind. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a mind reader, last I checked.
Well, I'm an over communicator. So I don't know if I've ever needed anybody to read my mind. I'm more the one that they're like, okay, that's a lot of information. Let me figure something out on my own. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think too, like the idea of the shame behind this is something that I recognized like a lot in the past, you know, maybe like 8 years, where I realized like I have to have these conversations with my partner. I have to be open about how I feel about my body. And another thing that this article talks about that I really want to focus on too is if you don't know what feels good for yourself, how are you going to be able to communicate that to somebody else? And so
Mm-hmm.
if, and that's what masturbation is. It's like, it's finding not all of it of course, but it's finding like what makes you feel good and what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and you know, kind of taking it from there and being like, hey, like I know this works for me and
Yeah.
I know this does not work for me, and being able to feel comfortable enough with your own body that you can also talk to your partner about it.
Yes. And that's the hard part right there. But I feel like once you start the conversation, you're going to feel so much better. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And you start feeling more confident, right? Like you feel more confident in your body, and you feel more confident in like your self acceptance and your own awareness and things like that. And this goes for men too. There's so much
Yes,
shame and stigma around like masturbation in men as well. And I think people think like, oh, if my husband's masturbating, it's,
I'm not
same
doing
thing. I'm
something.
not doing something for him. And, like,
That's not
that's
true.
not true. That really
Self
isn't true.
pleasure is just that. It's for the self. It has nothing to do with anybody else. If your needs
Exactly.
if your needs aren't being met, and you're masturbating because your needs aren't being met, that's a totally different topic than what we're
Yeah.
talking about. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. Like if you cannot do anything like being with your partner,
You have
yeah,
no
it's
sex life. If you have zero sex life with your partner,
and you're
and
just
and you're
masturbating.
just masturbating, then
That's
yes,
potentially a
that
problem.
is exactly what they're talking about. But what we're saying is, it's healthy if you're having a healthy sex life and everything's going great. It's okay if you catch your partner masturbating. It doesn't mean that you weren't good enough last night, or maybe they're just still horny, and it's not that big of a deal. Like,
Yeah. And that's the thing is like there's so many reasons why people masturbate, right? Like
yeah,
some people utilize it for helping them fall asleep because that is another thing where it releases hormones, right? And
yes,
so it helps some people fall asleep. It's de-stress, right? So maybe they're overwhelmed, maybe they're stressed out. It's also for pleasure, it's for sexual healing. Like a lot of people who have gone through sexual trauma, not a lot, I will say some people who've gone through sexual trauma, they utilize this as a technique to help them deal with the shame around that and to work themselves into a
that's what I
position where
did.
they feel comfortable with their body. Yeah, like you were
Yeah.
saying.
It took me
And
years. When in the beginning I thought, because of what I was doing to myself, I thought my vagina was ugly. Like, I
oh,
thought it was
interesting.
ugly, but my
Well, I think like that's like porn kind of. Oh, why didn't we include that in Sextober? I think that's like sorry,
your face
porn industry level is like the idea that our vaginas are like unattractive. You know what
and
I mean?
dirty. Yeah.
Yeah, because like all these women are having labiaplasty or whatever in porn, and they actually have surgery to make their vaginas look a certain way. And so then when you look at your own vagina, you're like, mine doesn't look like that. What's
I
going on
think I
here?
think for me it was more like I just felt dirty, like I was doing something dirty to it. Like I knew it was bad, it was wrong, until my mom was like, "No," and took me to therapy, and my therapist was like, "No, your vagina is beautiful. Your body's beautiful, and this is fine, and it's totally healthy and normal, and da da
Yeah.
da da." So it was like, but the shame almost turned into making it an ugly body part.
Yeah. I think the other thing too is like feeling comfortable, like masturbation, feeling comfortable with yourself as well, like getting that quote body positivity as
Yes.
you're like learning about yourself, and that changes the way that you think about your body, all of it, right?
Yes. I
Okay, so
agree.
the other thing is like you're in a relationship and you're starting to think like I know my partner's masturbating, like maybe I'm not enough for them. Everybody kind of like ebbs and flows on their like libido and their sex drive and all of that kind of thing. So like if your partner has a really high sex drive and you don't, like they're not going to want to make you feel like you're being manipulated into,
Yeah.
you know, going that direction when they know that they can handle it themselves and they can, take the edge off of their sex drive,
Or
right?
if
And
they know they're
so
going to be rejected because they know that there's a schedule in place, but they're feeling some type of way. You know what I mean? Right?
yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of those things that we just really do not like have a very healthy grasp on is like that it doesn't impact your relationship in a way where, if you're both understanding of it and maybe communicating really well, like you can do it in a healthy way, right?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so this is one of the ones that kind of made me laugh. It can help improve your skin potentially. Ever heard of the post orgasm glow? The beauty benefits of sex are real.
I love that.
So they also apply to masturbating. So they talk about, it increases your estrogen levels, which are known to help with healthier looking skin and hair. And so some people talk about how like it helps their skin and it helps their, like complexion, they look younger and things like that. So this one was what was interesting to me because I know, like, I've heard of the post orgasm glow, but I've never thought of it in a way that it would be like applicable,
An
you know?
orgasm a day keeps the doctor away.
Yeah, keeps a dermatologist away. Ooh, that brings up a good point because actually they think this is, still like studying in the works. They think that it could potentially reduce the risk of prostate cancer in
Yeah,
men.
I heard that.
Yeah.
If men masturbate or ejaculate once a day, and women it's like 3 to 4 times a week, it's really good for the prostate. That's what I heard.
This says research has found that compared to men who ejaculated 4 to 7 times per month across their lifetime versus men who ejaculated 21 or more times a month enjoyed about a 31% lower risk of prostate cancer. Enjoyed? That seems kind of like a
That
weird
seems like a
word to put
weird
with
word.
prostate cancer,
That does.
right? So, that's a great
There's lots of
that's a
health
great benefit.
benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so potentially safer sex practice, right?
Yes.
Because you got things you got to do. Like maybe you masturbate before you go out on a date with somebody and you make a decision maybe not to sleep with them on the first date. No shame. I'm just saying,
Maybe you
it's a
make that
wild
decision.
world out there, but you can make that decision. And maybe you feel like you relieve that stress and pressure beforehand and you're feeling good and you go into this date not feeling like, oh, I need to get laid or whatever.
Yes. She said it, you guys. We brought her over to the Asia side. She
She
said,
said it.
get laid.
I had to. I'm
I
sorry.
love it. Did that for me.
I just all of these are different, like good, like reasons why to like think about masturbation. I can't. Can I speak? Are my words coming out right? Am I having sentences? Am I having sentences? Am I speaking them? I don't know. Don't
Oh
know
my
what's
God.
happening right now.
I love it.
Um. Oh, the other one I wanted to mention because I feel like this kind of seems like more female focused or woman focused. This article also talks about helping men last longer in bed. So, there's a lot of shame and stigma attached to like how long somebody should be lasting while they're having sex or intercourse or whatever, getting laid. Sorry.
Whichever way you want to word it.
Whichever way you want to say it. But the idea behind it is that some people can, if they masturbate or have masturbation partner play beforehand, it can help them last longer during vaginal penetration or anal or whatever,
Yeah.
because it takes a little bit longer to rebound. That's not
Yes.
for everyone. I mean, it's not. But if you've ever tried to have sex twice in a short period of time, like that rebound for a penis takes a minute.
Yes. Yes. I agree. And it does help.
So the refractory period.
A
Just
refractory.
the
Well,
refractory period.
now we're pulling out the big words. Watch
Yeah, we
out.
are. Fuck yeah. Yeah. So, anyways, this article is really great. Again, I'll link it in the show notes so you guys can check it out. But I just think like feel your body out, like check it out, have a conversation with your partner. And if you're not ready to have a conversation with your partner, have a conversation with yourself. Like, why
Yeah.
do you feel shame around it? Why do you feel shame around it? Is it real? Is it necessary? Is it social constructed that
Is
you
it going
just
to
grew up
benefit
with?
your life if you start adding that to the, you know what I mean,
Mixed,
agenda?
the
Yeah.
rotation.
Is it going to help you? Because with all these benefits, if you try just for yourself, maybe it will start to benefit you and it'll help
Yeah.
your relationships too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And now you guys have heard me talk for almost 33 minutes. So it's Asia's turn to talk about the poll.
Yay. All right, poll results, you guys. A masturbation poll is loved on Instagram.
They all love the sex polls. Like
They
we're just
do.
like, let's talk about sex. And it's like, oh, my DMs are like
When
blowing up
I
now.
when I did this masturbation poll, I think it was like a year and a half ago. I didn't know when I did it. I can't find the book I wrote everything down in from that long ago, but I asked questions like, "Are you a inside or outside?" and stuff like that. And that
Why
poll,
would you say
that poll lit up, man. That poll went crazy. We didn't go that nuts on this one because it's more for
masturbation
educational, like
specifically? Yeah.
educational purposes too. It's not like a jokey like it was
Every time you say inside outside, like I just like I cannot help but laugh. I don't know why. Because I'm just over here
in
like
here, outie.
I'm here
You're
like
thinking belly buttons.
penetration versus clitoral stimulation, and you're like inside outside girl. Like,
We're so different. You're like so clinical with your terms.
hey, I can make them sexy.
I'm like, don't touch my cooter. You're like, oh my
Oh
God,
my
Asia.
god.
Oh my God, Asia. It's a vagina.
It's actually a vulva, but anyway.
I just love you for that. All right. So I did a poll and I said, do you masturbate? Oops, sorry. 83% said yes.
Okay, good. I like that.
It's a high number.
Yeah.
I do want to say in the beginning, I almost said the wrong word, but I'm not going to do it. I want to say in the beginning, um, this is mostly women. I don't think any men took this poll. So,
Probably because they felt a lot of shame in telling a woman
yes.
that they were
Yeah. Or
masturbating.
giving a woman that kind of power over them to know that kind of information is
Yeah, and
hard.
also I feel like, especially because some of our male followers are married or in relationships. We don't have
So
a
that might be,
Yeah, we don't have a huge market for men, but we do have some people that,
yeah, but it might be stepping over the bounds of their relationships if they disclose to me these types of information where women
exactly.
women felt more comfortable. So that's
Yeah.
just the way it worked out. Um, if you masturbate, do you use sex toys? 67% said yes.
Okay. Okay.
I like those numbers.
Yes.
If yes, does your partner know about them? 71% said yes, 10% said no, and 19% said I'm single.
10% is too many.
It is. I know the digits, so it's a little bit too many people. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, that's like the stigma attached to it and
And the
not being able to
secrecy.
have the conversation with your partner.
Yeah,
And
the
then it keeps
secrecy.
that guilt and shame around
Yeah,
masturbation if you're like hiding that part of
it
you.
does. It does. And it feels like you're almost like being disingenuous, I'm sure. Like just not being your true self 100% of the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to get into some kid stuff. We're not going to talk too much about it.
I don't like how you said that.
We're going to talk about talking to our children about masturbation,
Parenting. Let's say
parenting,
parenting.
parenting.
Okay,
Okay, so
thank
have you
you.
ever spoken to your kids about masturbation? 59% said no.
Wait, you forgot. Do you incorporate sex toys into your
Oh,
sex life?
I skipped one. You
Yeah, and
see
that's a
that?
good one to know.
Okay, do you incorporate sex toys into your sex life? 67% said yes.
Love that.
Yes.
That's higher than I thought it would be, but then I wonder if it's because we really just attract people who are like a little more open about things. I'm not
Yes.
saying like, like that doesn't mean anything other
And a
than,
lot of the people that follow me are in a little bit more like long-term relationships too, I think,
yeah.
where they've been
Yeah,
with
and
the
I think
person for
that
a
makes a
long time.
difference.
Yeah, because like if
Yeah.
you've been with somebody for 20 years, you may hold it in for like the first 7 or 8, but you're gonna
Yeah.
eventually be like, hey, this is what I like. You know what I mean? You
Yes.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you
No,
you
I
break
do.
those walls down and those barriers down throughout the relationship. So okay. Have you ever spoken to your kids about masturbation? 59% said no, or yeah, no. 30% said yes, and 11% said I don't have kids.
59% said no.
I have to say, to be completely honest, I don't know if me and the girls ever really had a conversation about it. It was more just like a text message. Hey, mom, would it be okay if I bought myself something? Do you know where I could get it? Me, yeah, here's a link. That kind of thing. It was never like an open conversation where they come in and be like, this is what I'm doing and
Interesting.
this is what I need. It's always a text message. So they don't have to talk to me face to face. And I haven't spoken to my son about it. I just had a conversation with my husband because of this episode and told him I think it's time that he had a
It's way
conversation.
past
Yeah,
time.
oh, I know, but it's his job because I feel like I would make my son uncomfortable with that conversation. I don't feel like he would receive it well from me. So I think his dad should start it. But yeah, I feel like I'm in that 59%, right? Because I haven't spoken to Josh about it.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's
I mean, I
almost
guess
like
you
an
are.
unspoken truth, though. It's almost like unspoken that it's okay, but we just
But
don't talk about it.
because he knows that you're open, right? But do
Yeah.
you feel like you not having that conversation with him is perpetuating the shame and maybe
Yes, I
like
do now that we're doing the
his
episode. Yeah.
inability to have that conversation with a partner later on down the
Yes.
road?
Now that we're doing the episode, yes, I do.
Because you don't have to go into the mechanics of it, right? You don't have to go into like, I know this feels good and blah 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 blah. It's more like, hey, you're at an age where I'm sure this is happening, and I just want you to know that like there's nothing shameful about that. As long as you're doing it in a way that is not harming others or in
Not harming
appropriate.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, you can always come to me or to your dad, and then just
Yeah.
leave it at that.
I plan to do it in the car, like on the way to a grocery store where we're not looking at each other because that's easier for my
Maybe do
kids.
it on the way home so that he can like have his space away from you when you're done.
Once we're
Yeah.
done. Good idea. So yeah, I'm looking into that. I think that this has opened my eyes to the the need for that and the necessity of it so that you
Yeah.
don't perpetuate the shame, which I have been.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah. All right, so we're gonna go and get into it. How do you feel about talking to your kids about masturbation? I feel like it's important because I grew up with so much shame around anything sexual, and
Yep.
the cycle stops with me. I
Perfect.
love this follower so much. She really is working hard on breaking all the cycles. Um, I feel like it's embarrassing for parents.
I mean, it
Well,
is.
yeah, it's embarrassing for
Even
everybody, I think.
right? And yeah, and that's the thing is it's like, let's take the embarrassment away. Like you're gonna feel embarrassed, but like pushing through that embarrassment like helps, right?
It takes it
So
away.
as many times as I've had this conversation, with you, with the podcast, with other people, with Ramona, like I still feel embarrassed about it.
Yeah,
But as I go on, like it's a little less shameful, it's a little less embarrassing, it's a little less like weird for me to say these things or talk about them and,
openly.
openly have the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. This person says, I'll give him sex ed books. Ha ha, he'll figure it out. And I
I
think
mean, he will, but
that's pretty much, I mean, yeah, not
yeah.
wrong. I think it's very important and I want them to feel comfortable with their bodies. I love that one. I had the hubby talk to the boys because this person has 3 sons. So she had her
Okay.
husband talk to the boys. Um, the only message I gave was it's normal and it's healthy, which that's
Okay.
fine. That's at least
Yeah.
you're giving a message. You're not like shaming them or making it seem like it's abnormal or
Yeah.
unhealthy. You know what I mean? All right, because I have boys, it's not a serious talk. It's more of an unspoken thing. See, this is something I feel like we have to get rid of.
Yeah, like the not having the
Yeah,
conversation
because they're boys
because they're boys and
and
it's
we're
like,
women. This
yes.
is a single mom, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and
So, like,
that's what I'm saying with you is like you're kind of perpetuating the shame surrounding
yeah,
it by you not having that conversation. And if you want like have Junior have the conversation with him too or like
yeah,
do it together on your way home from the grocery store. Like you're in the car and Liliana's not there cuz that would be really
really
uncomfortable for
uncomfortable
him.
for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right, and so this is the last one. I dread having to have the conversation, but I know it's necessary.
Okay.
See, I feel like this is something all parents can get their head around because, yeah, we dread having the sex talk. We dread having the masturbation talk. You dread having to have these kinds of really necessary conversations. But
Yeah.
once you're in it, when you're in it to win it. Once you just open
Yeah.
your mouth and start, you have to just go. You know what I
No.
mean?
And the other reason I think it's important is because like for females, right? Or people with vulvas and vaginas, like there is stuff in the media that makes jokes about like, oh, she used a cucumber or a carrot or her vibrating toothbrush or whatever. And when you don't have those conversations about like what is healthy to put into your
Yes.
vagina, there you
Amen,
have a
sister.
problem. And then as
Yes.
they get older, they're like, I'm just, shoving whatever's in there.
Yes. I'm not going to get into it, but I'm pretty sure you just hit the nail on the head because yes, that if you don't talk to your kids about it, they will use other things.
And you don't want them using things that are not
No.
designed or meant to go in there. Like
Yes,
that's
you
a
don't
recipe
want
for
that.
disaster.
Yes, I agree 100%. I'm glad you brought that up. Did your parents talk to you about masturbation? This is such a high number. I hit the
Holy shit.
floor.
93.
93% said no. So I would be the one person in this group of people that I polled that would be saying yes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's kind of
That's
crazy.
crazy.
Okay.
All right.
Yikes.
Wrap our mind around that. Did you have a sex toy as a teenager or a young adult? 59% said no.
Because there's
I
just like stigma attached to
I
that.
didn't have a sex toy but when I was younger, I found one of those little vibrator things that you're supposed to use on your back and I would use that and then replace it back to where it went.
I I'll just share my first experience with getting one. My sister sent it to me, one of my sisters, and she thought it'd be really funny, and so she sends it to me,
I guess a
and
gag gift.
kind of as a gag gift. I was like newly married at the time. And so she was like, "Oh, hey, here you go in case, like things don't work out or whatever." And I was like, throw that in my underwear drawer, like I don't know if I'm going to use it or whatever because at the time I was very uncomfortable with my body, very uncomfortable with like sex in general,
Yeah,
all of that. And I remember my husband at the time found it and he just lost his
came
shit about
unglued.
it. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And my sister and I joke about it to this day. Like we still think it is so funny. I was 19, I think, and we both just think it's so hilarious, like this whole story behind this. And
And your
anyways,
first dildo.
yeah,
Your first
it was
sex
like,
toy.
it was too like, how
Like
you
a
can
little bit
get,
like not like a good looking one.
no, it was like it almost looked like it was hidden in like a candy, Like, like if you first looked at it, you'd be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's like a candy
A
bar or
candy bunny or
something."
something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then you like open it up and it was like a vibrator or whatever, but
Oh my God. I love that. I love it. All right.
okay.
Here
You
we
we
go.
missed. Okay, if yes, did your parents know about it? 100% no.
100% no. No, you skipped one. Did your parents talk to you about masturbation?
Oh no, you did
93%
that
no.
one.
Oh, yeah, I did. Okay. All right.
And
I'm
then you
sorry.
did this
This
one.
poll is so big. I'm getting confused. All right.
Sorry, I took you out of your mojo because
It's
you
fine.
were like doing your thing and I was like, "Let me interrupt you again."
It's so great. I love it. Okay. If you did your parents know about it? They did not know. 100% did not know about their child's sex toy.
Don't say child, it seems weirder.
Teenager, young adult. Sorry.
Their kids, I don't know. Yeah, their parents didn't know about it.
The parents
Moving
did.
on.
Moving on. Okay. How would you react if your teenager asked you for a sex toy? Well, I have no idea. That's
I
honest right
mean,
there.
that's an honest
That's
answer.
honest.
I can
I didn't realize how I would react until it was put upon me. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? It is in the moment. Like when they get up the courage, it's not on your time. So it's
right.
whenever they get the courage to ask you if you haven't had
Yes.
that conversation.
I feel too like it's kind of one of those things that even if you were like, I have a scripted idea of what I would say, once it gets there or it's like a certain age, you don't know.
True.
So you're not
True.
gonna, it might not even be applicable anymore, but you never thought about it again.
Yes. So true. All right. I would talk to them and let them choose what they want to experiment with. I
All
love
right.
that. I would support the request.
Perfect.
We would go shopping and I would feel happy that they felt comfortable enough to talk to me about their body.
Nice.
I would buy them one and teach them how to clean it and where they can keep it and be safe.
All right. I like that one. I like that there's like continued education with that, right? It's not just
Yeah.
like, here you go. It's like, here
This
you
is how you
go, but
clean
like
it.
X, Y, and Z.
This is
Yeah.
where you keep it and this is when you do it so you'll be safe. Yeah, like giving them the boundaries needed to keep it
Right.
healthy. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Okay, so I don't think I would buy one for them, but I would explain that it's normal and okay that they would want one.
But I feel like that's kind of like, yes, you can do it, but
You can
I'm
buy
not
your
supporting
own, but
it.
I don't want to buy it for you. It makes me feel uncomfortable. You know what I
Yes. And
mean?
I'm not shaming the
No.
parent who said this, but I do feel like this sort of perpetuates that negative connotation to it.
Yeah.
And it's like, sit down with yourself and figure out, like, why wouldn't you buy it for them if they're
Yeah.
asking you to?
If they asked you for a pair of shoes or they asked you for a new, pair of headphones, would you buy those for them? Like this is
Yeah.
something they're asking you for and they are saying they need it. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm at with it. You know what I mean? Depends on the age or the kid and the age. And I agree with
If
this.
they're if they're asking for it,
They need
they're
it.
already utilizing something.
Something else. Yes. And I feel
It's
like,
already it's probably already age appropriate at this point. I mean,
yes,
you're not going to have a little person, who doesn't have some kind of understanding of sex at that point to come and ask you for a vibrator.
I
Like if
agree.
they're asking you, they're already thinking about it, they're already experimenting, they're already trying things and realizing that they need something else. So in my opinion, I understand this. Like I understand the idea of like not talking to kids about masturbation until you feel like it's age appropriate or something that they can digest. But if they're coming to you and they're
That's
asking
the
you
signal.
questions,
That's the
they
signal.
already know.
Yes, that's a signal that you're behind. All
Yeah.
right. One person said, I would be really surprised. You know what? I think I was surprised too when my
Yeah.
daughter asked me. But I think it was more just surprised that she had waited so long. You know what I mean? Like that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, yeah, it wasn't like a bad surprise. Okay. And the last one is I actually asked my daughter recently if she has one after your poll. And I'm very proud of, she does have one. And I'm very proud of her for taking control of her sexual health.
I love that.
Yeah, I did
I
the poll
really
and she went
do.
right to her youngest daughter and said, do you have one of these? Do you need something? Are you okay? And she said, oh, yeah, mom, I already have one. And this is where I keep it. This is what I do. And she's like, awesome. I'm so proud of you. And so it was a
That's awesome.
conversation that was spurred off by, the poll.
Yeah.
All right. And I said, additional thoughts about this topic. I wish I could go back in time and enjoy myself more and not listen to my dad who said self-love was bad.
Yeah. That's hard, especially coming from like a male figure, because
Yeah.
I
And
feel
she's
like
she's
that's
a
going to
daughter.
bleed into relationships if you're in like heterosexual or like
Yeah.
bisexual relationships with men or whatever, because you're going to feel like, well, my father figure told me like this is bad and dirty and
Yes. So they're
gross.
going to
And
think it's bad.
yeah, exactly. And so that's so harmful, but I do feel like that, up until kind of recently, that is the idea behind it, right? Like that's how we grew up. I mean, that's how the generation before us
Yeah.
grew up. Like it's a shameful, dirty thing.
Yes, it is. And you're supposed to do it in the room by yourself
Or not at all.
and not tell anybody ever. I'm so glad we're talking about this. I think it's going to help so many people. Another person said it's healthy and normal and should be spoken about more often and not be so taboo. Amen,
True that.
sister. We're with you. All right. I said if you have any funny masturbation stories, like when you're getting caught masturbating, put them here. And one person said the same exact thing that happened to me. So I'm just going to go into that now. When I, when I was like 14 years old or maybe 15, we moved back to California from Arizona, and we were living with my grandparents, and my mom was like trying to get her life together, you know what I mean? And working all these jobs and stuff. And I remember getting into the shower and like locking the door. This is the house my mom was raised in, you know, so she
Yeah.
knows how to unlock these doors. I'm
Yeah.
not thinking that far ahead, right?
No, of course not.
Get into the shower, lay down, plug the tub, you know, and just get the shower massager and just start going to town on myself, right? The water fills up to the point where it's past my ears now. So now I can't hear anything but the water that's coming out of the space,
Yeah.
right? That's all I can hear. All of a sudden, the shower curtain opens and my mom is just looking at me and I'm just
Oh my
laying
God.
there and I'm like,
Mortified, I'm sure.
hi, you know? And so I try to close it. She's like, Asia, get up. You know, like you're wasting a lot of water. My dad's freaking out. Like it was like a whole thing. But it wasn't a shame. It was just like, he pays for the water here. Like, what are we doing? Like, so, yeah,
She's like, use
it was
something else,
embarrassing.
okay?
It was so embarrassing. And I don't remember what happened after that. And I actually messaged my mom and I was like, we're doing a masturbation episode. Could you tell me that story from your point of view? Right. And she
Yeah.
goes, oh, you'd need to call me and I'd need like a day to process. I'm like, oh, well, it was a bigger deal for you than it was for me then.
I'm sure, honestly.
I moved on. Like it didn't bother me after that. It was a funny story, if anything. So that actually happened to one of my followers. And she said that her mom told her, oh, that's normal, no biggie, and just shut the curtain and went right back to life and like finish what you're doing and see you when you get out of here.
I'm sure she was like, I
I
cannot finish what
cannot
I am doing
finish.
now.
I am done. Thank you. And then I have a DM I'd like to read, which I saved as a screenshot, so it'd be easier to find. Um, and this person DM'd me and said, it's a funny story pertaining your poll. So my parents tell me that when I was little, I often would play with myself, and they play with myself everywhere and anywhere. And they taught me that I needed to go to my room to do that in private instead of making it a bad and dirty thing. That it wasn't supposed to do that. I wasn't supposed to do it because I would just do it wherever and whenever I felt like it.
I know somebody whose son does that. Like he's constantly
Touching himself.
like, yeah, but not even that. Like he'll like sort of put his hands down there and they kind of like move, like rocks back and forth, moves around. And
Yeah,
she'll just say, hey, that's a room activity.
I like that. See, I like that.
Yeah. And so it's like, hey, you're doing that in private, you know, like that's fine. Go do it, but like not
You
out
don't do
here.
it
And
out
oh,
here.
that's a room activity. Wash your hands. That's
I
it.
like
Like
that.
hands
See,
off.
I like that approach.
Yeah.
You have more.
Um yeah, so you know, I didn't want to make this episode too much about parenting because I really feel like masturbation is like super important to talk about, and I feel like we need to get more comfortable with it as adults and humans and everything like that. But I do know that like we do have a lot of listeners who have kids and don't know how to talk to their kids about this stuff. And so I'm just going to like throw a couple of suggestions out there if you are interested in talking about it. And I think it's one of those things where it's like if you don't have kids, you can still reflect on making sure that you're not making jokes that are shameful about
To
sex in
nieces,
general or nieces
nephews,
and nephews,
anybody's,
whatever.
any children, or I mean, any
Yeah.
teenagers or young adults that are around. Yeah,
Exactly. And so, you know, one of the things is like it's awkward for you to have that conversation, and it's okay to not be perfect at your delivery in this conversation. Like good enough is good enough. Just opening the door to having the conversation is enough for some kids to just be like, I can trust my parents. I
yeah,
know I can talk to them about anything. Um, so another thing is like your child is exploring, your kid is exploring like what feels good to them and all of that kind of stuff. And so just make sure when you're talking, like it's more of a like positive, like I understand this feels good and this is like something that you're exploring and you're learning about yourself. And you know, using appropriate and relevant disclosure. You don't need to go into details about your
No,
masturbation history,
do not
or
do
like
that.
times that your parents caught you or anything
Yeah,
like that. Don't do that. All you can say is like, I grew up in a home that didn't support, like body positivity or sex positivity or anything like that. And I just want you to know, like, I'm here if you have questions, or I'm
yeah.
here if you need anything from me in regards to this or anything like that. Do not have conversations about, I did this or I did that or
I was this
whatever.
age. Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, exactly. And then the earlier you start the conversations, honestly, the better, because younger kids are more like understanding of things. They feel less shame and guilt about things.
Yes,
And as they get older, the longer you hold off on those conversations, the harder it is to have them without them feeling shamed and embarrassed about it, because nobody was talking to them about it when they were in their developmental stage of like learning how to deal with those things. That
yes.
being said, it's like never too late to have that conversation with your kids. Like you're talking about talking to Josh about it. And it's not something that you can just be like, well, I missed the boat on that. We didn't start talking about it years
No,
ago. It's like, no, you can still have that conversation, and you can just make it, more appropriate for their age group. And, you're not going to sit him down and, like I said, talk about the mechanics, but just like, hey, I'm open if you have any questions or you need anything in
or if
regards to
anything
this.
happens, if you need me for anything, you don't know if they
Yeah.
somebody like, okay, you could honestly injure yourself if you're too aggressive, and then just keep it to yourself because there's so much shame behind it that you don't want to go tell your parents that you actually hurt yourself. You
Or
know what
you're
I mean?
using things that are inappropriate for that task.
Yeah. So I feel like this is something where even if you're not having like a heart to heart moment, it's more just like a opening the door. So if they need to barrel through it, it's
Yeah.
open. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And then of course, like setting boundaries, like we talked about, without shame, right? It's just
Yeah.
like, this is an activity that you can do in your
These are the
room or the
rules.
bathroom.
Yep.
Not even rules, just boundaries, right? You don't
Boundaries.
want to say
Yeah.
there's rules around it. Just like, hey, it's not appropriate to have your hands down your pants while we're walking through the grocery store.
Yeah.
It's, this is not an activity that you do with, your little sister in the room or
Exactly.
your little brother in the room. Like, this is a personal activity that you do alone.
Yes.
And then keep it humorous. If you have a teenager, like
Keep it funny.
they don't want you to sit down and be like, "Hi, honey, can you tell me about your
Yeah.
masturbate?" No, like they don't want that. Just keep it light, keep it humorous, keep it easy, and continue those conversations. Most of the time, your kids are not going to want to talk to you about this. It's going to make them feel weird and awkward, and all of their peers at school make jokes about masturbation. It's dirty. Nobody wants to talk about it. But just continuing to have that, like, even throwing out a conversation here and there every now and again,
You're planting the seeds. You know
keep
what I
doing
mean?
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because one day they might need you for something and you want them to know, you know.
That they can
And
come to you
if you're at a point where you're like, I don't know how to have this conversation, I can't do it, I feel so uncomfortable, like you can find somebody like a
in their life.
therapist
Yeah.
or a counselor, or make sure that they're doing their sex education at school, things like that. And that kind of helps bring a conversation together too.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, you got any closing thoughts on this?
I guess I think we covered it all. I just really I hope this episode helps people. It helped me to understand what I was doing, a lot of self reflection when I was preparing for this episode. So it's one of those things that if you just have some quiet moments to yourself after listening to this, maybe just do a self evaluation, see where you think you are with yourself first.
Yeah.
And then, maybe your children or your kids, teens second. But I think it's all with yourself first. Like I said,
Yeah.
I don't have much shame. My kids have found my toys. I don't have much shame. I don't hide them. You know what I mean? That kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But
Same.
I also don't like advertise it. You know what I mean? So I feel
Yeah,
like,
you're not out there like, "Hey
yeah, I'm
guys,
gonna
I'm
go play with
gonna be
myself.
taking a break,"
Yeah,
waving
it's
your dildo around.
it's not like that. So I feel like I'm not opening the door enough for those conversations, even though I'm so open.
Yeah.
So I hope this just helps people.
Yeah.
As a whole. Like if you're not having self pleasure and you're not enjoying that part, you're missing a big part of life. You
Yeah.
really are.
And having like learning about yourself, like we said, and having those conversations with your partner is super important too.
Yeah.
And I know that sometimes that takes time. Like it took me years for me to feel comfortable with utilizing that during partner
Me
play.
too.
Like,
At least 3 or 4.
oh, longer than that. I mean, feeling comfortable in myself has taken me a really long time. I never really felt comfortable with myself, and it's just been within the last few years that I'm like, this is me. This is how I feel
I'm very
comfortable. This is
proud of
what makes
you.
me.
That's
Thanks.
awesome.
So I think that's really important. And I have a funny story to tell you
Okay,
that I
close it
think
out.
you would think is funny. So you said like your kids know that you have vibrators and things like
Yeah,
that. Ramona knows that I have them too because I leave the boxes out, and we are affiliated with a couple of different companies
yeah.
that are for sex
So
play
they're
and
on
things
our
like that.
they're on our TikTok. Like
Like
we make them. They
she
see it.
sees it,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so we were having like a disagreement about the word wanker the other day, and I don't know where like the word came in. Ramona maybe used the word every now and again. She'll talk in a British accent. She like called someone a wanker or Reed or something. And then Reed said, "Oh, that means blah, blah, blah." And Ramona was like, "No, that literally means like a person who's masturbating." And he's like, "No, it isn't." And I'm like, "I don't think it does. I think it means like an idiot or something." And so we Google it, right?
Oh no.
And uh, we Google it, and Ramona just kills me because it's exactly like the literal definition of the word wanker is like somebody who masturbates, right? And then the second definition was like somebody who's considered to be like low intelligence, and idiot, stupid, whatever. And it's like British slang. And Ramona like just deadpan goes, "Well, with all mom sponsors, I guess she would know all about that." And I was like, "Oh, what?" Like she said it in a totally different way, but it was like that was the gist of it. And I just could not like stop laughing because
Oh
it was
my
so funny to
god.
me.
I love
And
that.
Reed's over here like just so uncomfortable. And he's like, "What?" And I was like, "You don't want us to explain it to you?"
You don't want to know.
It was really funny.
I love that. She's
Yeah,
got the best humor. I'm telling
I
you
know.
what.
She really does. She really, really does. She's
She's
pretty
very
hilarious.
funny. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so that just made my night because I was like, I gotta share this on the
We
podcast.
gotta name this episode. Yeah, I'm a
I'm a wanker.
I'm a bloody wanker.
Oh my God. Okay,
Anyway,
so you guys, thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, rate, review, subscribe. We know I'm gonna die with that tattooed on my forehead, so
that's
you
what we're
guys
gonna
all
get in October.
remember.
We'll get that
Shh,
matching.
don't tell them that.
You don't want to get it?
No.
Those three words like laugh, live, love.
Rate,
Rate,
review,
review,
subscribe,
subscribe.
RRS. Just like okay.
Oh my
Besides
gosh.
that, if you guys haven't already checked out our affiliate links, please do. You can support the podcast in so many different ways. Just like we are out here doing all this work for you guys, and while we absolutely love it, like we still have bills to pay for the podcast,
Yeah,
and anything you can contribute helps us so much. But if you're not wanting to financially contribute, just send us a review.
please.
Apple Podcasts is the best way to do it. You can rate us on Spotify. Podchaser's in there somewhere if you want to get that, but you got to like make an account or whatever. So thank you. And yeah,
Have
that's
a
it.
great
That's
week.
all I got.
Yeah, have a great week, you guys.